we'll have you back and maybe respond to some of the questions or issues that come up in public comment. By looking at the letter that the ACLU had written to the mayor, I think there's a lot of good points that are in here. They talk about liability as well. There's this one paragraph, if you don't mind my reading. Despite advocacy by police departments and Taser International, Taser use remains highly controversial, and studies have consistently called into question weapon safety, in particular against high-risk populations such as those with mental illness or those under the influence of drugs. The link between elevated risks of serious injury and these populations should raise serious concerns for San Francisco officials grappling with a persistent mental health crisis on the streets. One recent study, and this is actually the University of Central Florida, one recent study has shown that citizens were injured 41% of the time when tasers were used as the only type of force, and 47% of the time when tasers were used in conjunction with another form of force, compared to people being injured only 29% of the time when no taser was used. What are your thoughts about that? So that when there's no taser used, there's actually less injury that happens in contact with people.
You know, it's funny, I actually have data that shows the opposite. I contacted, for instance, the California Air Patrol and looked at their data relative to the deployment, and they've done it piecemeal, although their entire force of 6,000 or so is deployed with this weapon system. And what they tracked were both officer injuries and suspect injuries, and both categories were less after the deployments. So I think there's a number of sets of data out there, and unfortunately, it's not always in alignment.
Well, this was a study of who were experiencing mental health issues.
Sure.
And I think what the difference between what kind of law enforcement happens within our 49 square miles and what happens on our highways is very different as well.
I think there's a number of them. We looked at our 5-year study of all shootings. There are a number of contributing factors that I think add or influence those injuries and or deaths. We looked at 15 auction ball shootings over our 5-year study. 7 of them were non-lethal. 8 of them were lethal. In all 7 cases, there was no detections of any drugs or anything of that nature on board. On all 8 instances, the medical examiner discovered multiple drugs on board of the victim in those cases. So I think there are a number of factors that contribute to the injuries we may be talking about that I don't think is going to be captured in this paragraph.
And before we go to public comment, just one last question. What is it now that's driving a push within the department for tasers? Is there, has the human heart changed over the past five years or so? Are we seeing a dramatic increase in officer-involved shootings compared to what we had before? Are we finding that despite what we see in terms of controversy that this is what's been considered best practices? What is actually driving this forward?
I think the human heart, particularly the heart of this department, hasn't changed. If you look at the history, of the department, every chief, starting with every chief has asked for tasers, including Heather Fong, Doris Gascon, temporary chief go down, and now Chief Sir. And in each cases, I think those discussions were precipitated by an officer-involved shooting that in the hearts and minds of our chief, of this organization, they looked at the facts of those cases and said, listen, if we had a different weapon system, if we had an electronic control weapon system, we would not have had to deploy that force. And in this case, with Chief Sir, and I completely concur, our shooting incident that took place in July, we feel in our hearts and minds that had we had an electronic control weapon system in place and deployed, that person would be alive today and back to the road to recovery. And I think it's consistent and the reason behind each one of these chiefs bringing the discussion to bear.
Thank you. Well, I just hearing that, I'm reminded of when Officer Grant was shot. He was shot by an officer thinking that's what he said. Sure. He thought he had a taser and was going to be applying that. So I don't see that necessarily an equation that results to, fewer officer-involved shootings. And we also have the experience of, we have many settlements that we do on the Board of Supervisors. Occasionally we have settlements of, policing settlements that deal with the victim of someone at the hands of the police. That comes up, and I see it will open the door with another weapon that can be used. That weapon will lead to other settlements or liabilities that we'll have as a city. That's a big threat and concern that I think members of this committee have, and certainly members of the public have.
And I think that's precisely why the chief wants to make sure that we adhere to the resolution of the police commission, that we do engage the community, that we are incredibly transparent in terms of what we have in place to safeguard and limit any liability that takes place. The nature of law enforcement is that it's not about liability. There's something, you can't control everything, and some things do not happen according to plan. So how do we make certain, what do we do to put in place to ensure that our officers are prudent and judicious in their conduct? And that's training, clear vision, clear oversight and management of those who are responsible for the engagement in carrying out this mission. And we have those things.
Agreed. We're going to Con. I'm just, afraid that we're approaching a lethal cliff, and we're approaching a place where we opening ourselves up to greater liability by use of tasers. Let's go on to public comment.